Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Am I ready to go? Great. Okay, thanks for that, Dan. So my name's Paul Rowe. I'm Queensland University of Technology, which is a university in Australia in Brisbane, which is about sort of 600 miles north of Sydney on the east coast. I guess with what Dan has said, the important thing for me is to be brief, right? So, first of all, let me give a bit of sort of context about myself. I'm a computer scientist, so please don't ask me any sort of bio questions because I don't know the answers. Also, what I'm going to talk about is a small project, so I don't have any kind of big iron or big data or not really even sort of big dollars, although I am thankful I do now have some funding from Microsoft and from the Australian Research Council, so thanks for that. Up until now, I've had just one research master's student working on this project, but I think it's a great project. So I've been doing what sort of Jim Gray recommended and actually sort of working with some local kind of scientists, looking at some of the problems that they face and trying to sort of help them. In particular, I've been working with some sort of biologists. Well, working with them is probably not so much the right term, so much as sort of looking over the shoulder and watching what they're doing and thinking, wow, this looks either sort of complicated or painful. A lot of sort of cutting and pasting, up and downloading of data and things like that going on. Again, the bioinformatics work going on at QUT is not it's not a sort of a huge lab. There are some people doing some sort of important and good science, but they're using pretty much sort of standard everyday bioinformatics tools. So it's much more difficult than it should be. That's the key thing. So if we sort of look at the sort of problems that, I guess in general, that are sort of faced within eScience, and these are the sort of problems that I guess most people have sort of been sort of discussing one way or another over these sort of 2 days. There is an issue to do with sort of software tools. Often the software tools are not that great. Sometimes they're sort of homegrown. There are sort of websites. There is sort of data coming from sort of websites. There's sort of local data, local tools, different services, a diverse range of sort of data formats. And I guess the thing that came as a bit of a surprise to me is that not only is there this sort of diverse range of data formats, but there's also a sort of diverse range of sort of format abuses. So it's not just that the data is dirty, but people are even putting things in the sort of the wrong places, which makes it really, really sort of hard. There's obviously a sort of a need to automate the tools. There's a lot of sort of cut and paste going on, as I mentioned. There's a lot of sort of up and downloading of data, a lot of sort of cut and pasting of data, manual data sort of reformatting, sort of pulling in of data into Excel or running these sort of Perl scripts over them. A lot of the Perl scripts which I've sort of seen seem to sort of spend most of their time just sort of reading in data, doing some fairly sort of trivial sort of computation on them, and then sort of spitting the data out in a different format. There's an awful lot of sort of format conversion tools out there. I mean, obviously there are some sort of other more sort of serious tools as well. And then, of course, there's the sort of the process and data management problems which people have been talking about. These, in some ways, are the huge problems. They're the sort of the big problems, and probably arguably the sort of more important ones to do with, how do you deal with sort of long-running processes and parametric studies? How do you sort of do sort of data sort of provenance, curation, that kind of thing. So these are sort of the big problems, and these are actually sort of manifest in, albeit the sort of the smaller, not the smaller science, but the sort of smaller technology which was sort of going on with the scientists with whom I've been sort of collaborating. So there's a lot of sort of talk about workflow. So I want to talk a little bit about workflow and what we've done with, with workflow and how that sort of helped sort of our biologists. So workflow is a mechanism for coordinating processes and people in the most sort of general sense. It's potentially useful for eScience, and there's a there's a lot of different existing sort of workflow systems out there. In some ways, it's a bit like the grid that people sort of bandied about as the next big thing, the silver bullet, the thing that's going to sort of cure all of our problems. Some people sort of say that you need sort of specific kind of workflow systems in order to sort of do eScience. Other people are using sort of traditional workflow systems from sort of business and the like. And that's essentially sort of one of the things which we sort of set out to investigate. Before going any further, what I need to do is probably just to sort of outline exactly what workflow is, because to a lot of people it doesn't seem as though it's sort of much more than a glorified sort of shell script. You know, if you can sort of stick a whole heap of sort of commands in a batch file, isn't that workflow? Well, that's partly what workflow is. Certainly if you look at workflow systems, there is an element of sort of scripting or automation to them. That's, if you like, the sort of the base level of what's going on. Nevertheless, that scripting may take the form either of something akin to a sort of a traditional program, if you like, some kind of a flow chart, or it may be more sort of event and rules based. The sort of more important aspects, the value that you get from workflow are sort of support from sort of transactions, persistence for long-running workflows, sort of monitoring, and the idea of being able to sort of reuse workflows. So these are the things that often people claim that they need in eScience, in particular the idea of the sort of persistence, because we've got sort of long-running processes, the need to be able to sort of interact, to be able to sort of monitor and track processes, and I guess to some extent the sort of transactions. So the other thing that's fairly clear is that workflow by itself is no silver bullet. You can't just sort of give a scientist a workflow system and say sort of there you go. It's not actually sort of going to help them. So what I've sort of done here is to sort of outline what I think some of the sort of key requirements of an eScience system are, and then to sort of try to sort of address those. So in particular, what the sort of the end scientist is interested in is the sort of the model for this sort of automation and the model for the user interface. It's how are they going to use that system. So I've got these sort of 10 requirements here. I wouldn't claim that I've sort of solved all of these, and these are not necessarily to scale. One of the sort of the key things for the workflow as opposed to the sort of system as a whole is sort of automation. That's what we're hoping that the workflow system will do. We want to get away, or the end users, the scientists don't want to be programming, they don't want to be scripting. I would actually argue that they don't want to be sort of flow charting either, that's not a particular sort of natural thing to a scientist. They certainly don't want to be using sort of command lines, and they want to automate and get away from this sort of manual data reformatting and the sort of explicit sort of data transfer that's often necessary, whether that's sort of via FTP or HTTP up and downloads or grid FTP. We need to certainly support experimentation and collaboration. We need to deal with long-running experiments and legacy code and these sort of other things here. The bottom two things are, I think, particularly sort of important. I mean, the data and experiment management is obviously sort of a big thing, goes without saying. But the bottom two things I think are important. This idea of we don't want to create a sort of an application island. It's something that a lot of the guys at Microsoft sort of talk a bit about, because Office to some extent sort of does that. It kind of locks you into particular data formats, and that's something which is actually being addressed in Office sort of 12. But you don't, it's all very well being able to sort of pull data into your system, but it's important that you can kind of get data out of your system as well, and that other people can kind of use it, because it's not necessarily going to exist as sort of an island. And we don't want to sort of reinvent the wheel, so ideally we want to sort of reuse sort of technology. My group are very much, we sort of consider ourselves to be amongst like sort of systems integrators. We want to build from sort of the best blocks that are around and then work out what the sort of the missing pieces are. So with that in mind, what we've been essentially looking at is using sort of commercial off-the-shelf technology, in particular using some of sort of the Microsoft sort of .NET technologies to build this workflow, this sort of workbench, if you like, system. The technologies which we've been using are sort of SQL Server, which of course a lot of people have been talking about, SharePoint, which is Microsoft's collaboration system, the Biztalk 2006 workflow engine, and the ASP.NET framework for dynamic web pages. So the actual sort of architecture of our system looks something like this. So the key thing is that we've got a sort of a SharePoint sort of portal. We're able to sort of leverage a lot of the existing sort of functionality within that just comes out of the box. And what we've done is to produce a little sort of component so that we can actually deal with sort of bioinformatics sort of workflows within that. So the green is are the parts which sort of we've had to do. The rest of it is just the stuff which we've sort of purchased off the shelf, as it were. We're using sort of Biztalk to host our workflows, and we've got our sort of a local sort of data cache in which we store some sort of sequence data and things. Okay, so we've got to live with legacy code. So in order to sort of live with the sort of legacy code, we're sort of wrapping our sort of applications. So in particular, a lot of the sort of existing Perl scripts and sort of command line applications which we need to use, we're wrapping with some sort of C#. We've got a sort of a custom sort of XML sort of description of those. The actual wrapping process is manual. It's a sort of fairly expensive thing to do, but once you've done it, you can then sort of reuse these sort of components within our system. I think this is a place where, when sort of Simon was asking for what the sort of missing pieces are, this is a place where I think there's a missing piece. We need some, ultimately, I guess, some better virtualization sort of technology to deal with some of this sort of legacy code. Okay, so I'm not actually, rather surprisingly, I'm not actually going to talk a lot about Biztalk or workflow, really. One of the reasons for that is because we've been using Biztalk 2006, and with sort of recent events and what's happened, and what's been sort of announced by Microsoft, in particular the Windows Workflow Foundation, I suspect that would be a much better bet if you want to sort of go the workflow route and use some sort of Microsoft technology there. So Biztalk is a business sort of integration server, which essentially means that it's really oriented around sort of integrating business processes, and there's a lot of sort of emphasis on doing kind of data adaptation, particularly at sort of the messaging level. It's also, because of the sort of business emphasis, very much oriented around sort of static workflows. There's a part of it called the Human Workflow Services, which is the part which sort of we've used, which is more oriented around sort of dynamic workflows. But as I sort of say, with the recent announcement of the Windows Workflow Foundation, which is, I think I'm right in saying, going to become a sort of a core part of Biztalk for implementing workflow, I think that's probably the way to go. And I expect that probably around the middle of the year we'll actually start moving over towards that. Okay, so in terms of our model, what we've done is we wanted to sort of really keep it simple. So we've gone for an 80-20 solution. We've said we're just going to deal with straightforward sequential workflows. We're not going to look at complicated branching and other things like that. The reasons for doing that are, well, it's simple, and also so far none of our kind of users, as it were, have had any workflows that haven't turned out to be like this. Using this model, we can obviously express fairly sort of straightforward sort of pipeline sort of style workflows, but we can also express slightly more complex ones with more complex dependencies, as I've got on your right here. So also with those ones, we're able to put in these sort of format adapters sort of to do with some of the sort of these different sort of formats that arise in sort of bioinformatics. At the moment, we're doing it manually. One of the things we want to do is to look at a more sort of semi-automatic means of putting in those sort of format adapters. So that's the sort of the model for the workflow. The actual sort of interface for the workflow we've modeled after a sort of shopping cart. So the idea is we want to make the thing sort of very sort of simple for people to use. We've got a web-based interface. We're using this web-based portal sort of SharePoint through which we're sort of accessing our sort of workflows. So the kind of things that you do in a web shopping cart is you browse around some things, say some sort of books. You sort of select some, you review them, you sort of type in your credit card details and shipping details if you're brave enough, and then you kind of confirm and order the purchase. People are used to doing that. It's a fairly sort of natural way of doing things on the web, and you're able to sort of navigate around sort of backwards and forwards within that process. Of course, if you sort of go too far, then you're committing to buying, and of course, if you then sort of go back again, you're going to end up sort of buying duplicate books. But nevertheless, that's the sort of the paradigm of the thing. So we wanted to sort of reproduce that sort of simple navigation model for these sequential workflows. The other thing that I'm sort of very interested in, and through sort of previous work where we've built sort of add-ins for Excel to do grid computing, is I'm very interested in sort of spreadsheets. And one of the things that I learned about sort of spreadsheets is they have a very natural sort of calculation mechanism In particular, you make some sort of change to a cell, and then that change is just sort of ripples through the sort of spreadsheet as is sort of necessary. It sort of drives then the sort of the computation. That's sort of very nice and very easy to understand. The other thing that you get with a sort of a spreadsheet is you get the fact that the actual sort of spreadsheet interface is actually decoupled from the evaluation engine. So potentially what that means is if you've got a very sort of long-running spreadsheet calculation, you can still interact with the spreadsheet and use the interface while the actual evaluation, the calculation mechanism is going on behind it. And that's sort of a good paradigm for what we want for our workflow as well. And the final thing is you can actually turn this sort of calculation on and off, and that gives you a sort of great control over what you're doing. It gives you this sort of disconnectedness, and it also gives you a way of introducing sort of parallelism, which is one of the sort of the next things which we're going to be sort of working on. Okay. All right, so now I can hopefully run my demo. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of show a quick demo, which of our system. This is a sort of a SharePoint portal which we've built. We had to do very little to get this up and sort of running, which was nice. We've got these sort of various parts. These are sort of standard things, so sort of sharing documents, having sort of contact lists, sort of discussion boards, things like that. And this is the new part that we've added in these workflows. So I'll click on a workflow. This then gives me a list of my sort of current workflows. It doesn't show whether if there's anything going on or not. It should do. That's something we still need to add. So let me show a particular workflow. So as I said, I don't know much about bioinformatics, so I'm actually going to show you a sort of test workflow, hopefully. Right, which is about baking cakes. Okay, so let me first quickly describe the sort of the interface. Basically, these are all of our sort of controls here. So the control is I can move on to the next step, or I can go back a step. I can turn the evaluation on and off. That's all the controls I've got over the workflow. Each individual workflow step may require some input, and hopefully will generate some output, but those are the controls I've actually got over the workflow system itself. So if I actually sort of go here to the input for this sort of cooking demo, currently the evaluation is sort of off, so if I sort of move forward, nothing's going to happen. So I'm going to turn the evaluation on. I'm now going to sort of bake my cake. Let's sort of order a few of these things, like some sort of chocolate as well for my cake. I can then move on to the next step. So what this is actually doing is behind the scenes, Biztalk is actually sort of running. It's actually sort of generating. Okay, so I'm still buying my ingredients at the supermarket. Let me just move back again and I'll try again. So what's happening there is because the evaluation is decoupled, the calculation is decoupled from the interface, if there's a long-running job like kind of buying these ingredients, then I'll just get some sort of message saying that job's sort of ongoing. It's still going on in the background, which means I can actually go away, I can log out, I can blow away the browser, come back to that same workflow and look at what's going on. Let's try again. Okay, shopping is complete, so I've done my shopping now. Bought my bits and pieces. So now I'm going to go on to the next step, which is mixing the ingredients. So here I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use a fork to mix my ingredients. I'll then, if I don't like that, I can sort of move backwards and forwards. So that's what this sort of workflow is all about. I mean, in some ways, right, this interface is sort of is completely underwhelming. You know, you think, it's obvious. What's the big deal? And that is the whole point. That's why it's so good. Okay, this is about our 10th iteration in terms of the interface, not the colors and things. We're not good at doing that kind of stuff, but actually sort of working out how should this stepping and sort of how should this interface actually work. So the mix isn't ready yet. The reason I'm using these backwards and forwards buttons is because the refresh doesn't seem to work. It should work. I should just be able to do a browser sort of refresh. So the mixing is complete. I then move on to my next step. I'm going to cook the thing, and I'm sort of running out of time. So I'll cook it for 30 minutes. It doesn't really take 30 minutes to cook. Should be ready. Baking's complete, and I've got my cake. Okay, so that's how we do our workflow. We do If I go back here very, very quickly, I'll just show you the pattern workflow. Oh, shouldn't do that. There's a bit of a formatting bug there. This is actually what our sort of biologists are sort of using or are going to be using very sort of soon. This is sort of an EMBL query. There's a sort of sequence extractor that pulls out a bit of the sequence and then does some sort of pattern matching sort of over that, doing some sort of motif analysis. So there is a sort of a serious side to this. It's not just about sort of making cakes. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, so final slide. Some of the sort of future things which we're going to add to this, we know how to, a really nice way to incorporate sort of data parallelism into this for doing sort of parametric studies. I haven't shown you how you actually construct workflows. We have a sort of simple way of constructing workflows sort of incrementally. That's something which we're going to do a bit more work on, which we've got some sort of quite neat ideas for. The SharePoint portal at the moment, although it sort of shows the workflows, we don't actually sort of show the sort of sequence data in there. We've actually had a prior quite sophisticated component for managing kind of sequence data, which again I haven't got time to show you. We're actually going to pull that apart so that we actually can show that sequence data again within sort of SharePoint itself as a sort of a special sort of listing component. We're going to move to Windows Workflow Foundation for the actual sort of back-end engine that's doing all that calculation. And the interface, to make it a little bit nicer, we're going to use this Atlas sort of Ajax-style technology so that you get a nicer sort of web interface. Yeah. Okay, I'll stop there and take questions. Thank you. Yep. Okay, you.
What is the main advantage that you expect from moving to Windows Workflow
From Biztalk?
Yeah.
The main advantage moving it to there from Biztalk is that we haven't done this yet, but it seems to be it's just a framework, so it's not this sort of huge server component. I presume that the licensing issues will be kind of friendlier, as it were, or easier for people to sort of use it and potentially sort of replicate it. In a sense, it sort of does less in that it doesn't have all of this sort of sophisticated messaging and the adapters and that kind of framework that Biztalk has. But we're not using that because we're using this sort of human workflow services part. It's sort of more dynamic, so it's better able to support the sort of the dynamism which we need for these sort of workflows. I didn't really sort of show it to you there, but with our workflow constructor, one of the ways that you can kind of construct workflows is basically we're sort of browsing through the steps and just saying, I'm going to do that step now, and then pick the next step, I'm going to do that step. And so we have a sort of prototyping approach to constructing the workflows, which we think is sort of very natural and sort of a nice way to do that. You can't do that if you're doing sort of slang-style schedules because they're kind of sort of compiled and sort of set in stone relatively. Yeah.
Windows Workflow Foundation is the workflow whole kernel that was in Biztalk. So what they've done with that is they've taken out the essence of workflow and also extended it with all of the lessons that they've learned for the last few years, so it represents the next generation beyond that. So the reason we moved to it, aside from all the good things you just mentioned, is this is just the evolutionary path that we're going there. It's also an extensible framework, so we might do a lot of interesting things that is implied maybe different from a business-oriented setting. Scientific workflow, for example, in a number of ways is quite different from business workflow.
I'm sorry, can you explain especially from the communication they integrate to the offer communications platform for
Absolutely.
There already is an Go component for Biztalk, and I presume that there will be for the Windows Workflow Foundation as well. The extensibility, though, is a really good point. This sort of difference between the scientific and business workflow, I think, is a bit overemphasized. It depends upon the kind of business workflow you're talking about. If you're talking about the sort of more unstructured sort of human kinds of workflow, I think that's very similar to the kinds of things we want to do with scientific workflow. Sure. Well, that's a good reason for using workflow, because it gives you a good sort of handle on doing those kinds of things. At the moment, all we simply do is to sort of catch the exceptions. The kind of thing which I'm envisaging is that we'll have some sort of policy for retrying, kind of thing, a bit like those old, with sort of the old dial-up lines where you could kind of say you're prepared to redial a certain number of times. I think we need that kind of functionality there. It needs to, it needs a little bit of smarts, but you don't want the thing to be sort of too smart, so you want to sort of try a couple of times. I mean, that's, for today, because this is very much about doing things today with sort of HTTP-based web services and not using reliable messaging and that kind of stuff. Okay, thank you.